And with that, let's jump into story time. I am talking about tapas this month, and specifically the definition of tapas that invites us into choosing wisely, based not only on what we know from our experience and what we know from our study, but also listening to that inner teacher, that guru center that guides us when we can trust it. So, welcome to story time, and welcome to the practice of yoga living, which requires us to show up, to breathe, and when there is capacity, to study. And we can study by way of our connection, by way of our introspection, by creating a calm, abiding space and expanding to the edge, tickling that edge with new knowledge, with new experience, with new insight. So, tapas. Tapas, as defined by Lisa Lowitz and Rima Datta, just as a reminder, we talked about this last week. They define tapas as the burning zeal, desire to achieve self-realization, purification. It's the practiced discipline to cultivate a fiery spirit, burn through the ego. We practice endurance. We build strength and stamina and wisdom. And it's the understanding that discipline is a form of self-care, not self-deprivation. So the story I want to share with you is actually a long time learning story. And that is knowing what to say yes to, what to say no to, and even being comfortable with saying, I don't know. Now, I use this analogy in the metaphor of our spinal movement, our 6 directions of the spine. The nod, cervical vertebra 1, helps us say yes. Only one vertebra is necessary to say yes. Ironically, we need 2 vertebrae to say no. I don't know about you, but for me, it's a lot harder to say no than it is to say yes, particularly if what's being offered looks good or seems like it's expected, or maybe I should do it. Interestingly enough, the analogy goes the next step, in that vertebra 3 through 7 is what allows us to tilt the head from side to side, which to me is a lot like, I don't know. So if we use that analogy and just go one more step, right? 25% of the opportunities in my life, I'm designed to say yes. And then another, doubling that, so maybe that's not 25. I'm not doing my math right here, right? So in the sense that it's probably closer to 12.5% is for saying yes, 25% is for saying no. But the majority, half of everything that we confront is this 4, 5, 6, 7 vertebra of saying no, of saying I don't know, KNOW. So what's the point of this analogy? Well, it's also my experience with learning to enforce my boundaries is a practice of tapas, particularly recognizing that the discipline is a form of self-care, where I think so much of my upbringing and my internalization of expectations was about pleasing others. I did the things that I did or not did because that's what was expected, that's what was required, that's what was asked of me. Never really discerning the idea of where my boundaries were or what was in my best alignment. In other words, I said yes to things that were offered to me because I didn't want to miss it, fear of missing out. I was invited to be in this group. I was asked to lead this organization. I was, invited or welcomed into this association. And I said yes to everything. So much that I got really, really good at micromanaging minute by minute my schedule so that I could shift gears from this task to this responsibility, to this rest, whatever it might be, the things that were on my plate. In fact, you can even look, literally, physically, find evidence of this overcommitment in my high school yearbook. And that my picture as being a participant is not on every page. There were other students in my class, but probably on every other page. You could probably ask my kids and they'll tell you, because we've counted how many times mom shows up in the yearbook because I'm an overachiever. Now, it took me a long time to realize that, one, I could say no and not be rejected. More importantly, that I could say no as a practice of self-care. Now, the story that I want to share with you is actually the story of one of my children. And I'm owning it as my story too, because the temptation as the parent in this story and my habit, my history of overperforming and overcommitting and saying yes more than my body, my mind, my spirit is built to say yes. I could have influenced my kid to say yes to something that wasn't in her best interest, that wasn't necessary, and the timing wasn't right. What do I mean by that? At the end of middle school, my child was invited into the honors program for their math study. Now, in Maryland, we have a requirement of having a math class every single year in high school, so that when you graduate, you've got this kind of assortment of math skills. She was also invited into advanced language. So in this sense, she has a passion and an interest for English and for language. She doesn't have a strong interest in math as a study or as a future integration. Yeah, she needs to use math for basic skills. Whereas when I was at that point in my high school career and well into my college career, I was taking 27 classes a semester while working full time in college because I was afraid of missing out on something. I wanted to do it all. Well, here we are now, 30 some odd years later, working with my child, and we explored the benefits, the cost benefits, meaning what was the price that we would pay if she said yes to this opportunity versus what is really the benefit that this is going to bring to her. I took physics, I took calculus, I took all of the advanced classes except for biology because I couldn't get over my dissection issues. Ironically enough, today I'm a freak about anatomy, right? I love anatomy. Had I known that then, who knows what could have happened. But my point is, in talking with my child about not only where their passion lives in terms of what do you want to learn more about, the intention, what excites you, where do you want to put your effort, your energy? And in her reflection, in this safe space that we've created for her to have an opinion, and yet to live in this I don't know space more than the yes and the no space, she said, I don't like math that much. Can I just take the regular math? I said, yeah. She says, well, will that make me look less smart when it comes to school and to college and to applications for what's next? And I said, well, it might make you a little behind other students if you want to pursue math or science or engineering. But really, what's the rush? Because we already knew that my child, like me, has challenges with anxiety, has challenges with overwhelm and compensation. And so in that conversation, the invitation was presented from her teachers, from her counselors, and she had rave reviews from her test scores to her performance to everything that looked like this would be a good opportunity. And that's a wonderful place to be at that precipice of invitation, as long as we're also supported so that we can say our answer, whether it's a yes or a no, and still know that we're enough. So maybe you already know the end of this story, but my child opted to not enroll in the advanced maths, but to say yes to the advanced language. Now, I am proud to say that not only was that decision affirmed given her passion and her interest, now she's pursuing English next year in the fall at her choice of college. And the math has never been a sticking point of whether or not she's ready for that. She got a scholarship, she got encouraged, super excited, both from the school and the academic as far as her standing. But what we also recognize is that now, in light of COVID and what that brought into our challenges for our education and socialization, is that the added stress of trying to learn something that was hard on top of just being new, it was unnecessary for where she wants to go in life. And not unlike me choosing to study anatomy later in my adulthood, when I have some confidence about how I can learn, if at some point my child decides to learn more about maths and sciences, maybe even changing their passion for their career, that can happen. We have our entirety of life to explore the edges. Unfortunately, many of us have learned that if we don't jump off the cliff, we're going to miss out on the lesson of learning how to land or how to fly or how to fall. But there's plenty of other ways in which we can learn to fly and to fall that don't have to mean we build and build and build stress on top of stress on top of stress, resulting in always having to say yes, or at least feeling like we have to say yes. Now, the other side of this story too is recognizing that even if we say yes to something, but then once we begin that journey, we realize, this is different than I expected. Or perhaps I didn't do enough research to know what I was really saying yes to, and now I need to change my mind. Well, hello. Can you embrace that as a gift? I have new information. I'm going to make a new decision. Yeah, there will be consequences if you have to say no now to something that someone else was counting on. But wouldn't you rather say no now as an honoring of your own integrity, your own intention, and work to repair that relationship, as opposed to risk damaging that relationship because you've disappointed, or perhaps you didn't follow through, or perhaps you build resentment on either side, in which case that kind of repair is a lot harder than when we start from our alignment and our integrity and choose based on what we know. Now, here's the real caveat. Comes back to Brene Brown's work, is that in order to speak our truth, we have to practice courage. And courage is one of the tools, as well as one of the gifts, that comes from embracing our own imperfection, allowing ourselves to be a work in process. In other words, not only do we have to be okay with where we are, we have to practice, we have to get experience, which will help us gain confidence and competence in choosing the next right step. So I want to close with a poem, which is by the same author, or at least Lisa Lowitz. She's a yoga teacher and a poet. And this poem is called Choose Wisely. Now I'm going to share another poem. It was really hard for me to limit myself to one today, but I want to share another poem next story time, because I think it's going to take us deeper into this sense of making the choice. So today, this poem is called Choose Wisely. Take a look around. What's your intention and what's available to you? And then take that information in so that you can choose wisely. She writes, I've never been to the rainforest, but I can wrap myself in blankets of imagined moss and be consoled by the deepest green. I've never met my ancestors, but I can see them in my dreams, vivid as the cobblestone streets they walked on, taking only what they could carry. You've never seen your future self, yet you can create her in each moment through your thoughts, your words, your deeds. We don't live alone. We don't die alone. Don't forget this. Never forget this. Choose wisely. Choose well. Just don't be afraid to choose. Then stand firmly by your choice. Tapas, the discipline to wisely engage in what's available, is the process of learning to say yes to things that are in our alignment, to say no to things that are not, and to admit when we don't know, in which case we make a tentative decision, or we go out to gain more information, whether that's an experience out or an introspection and experience in. And from that experience, that inquiry, we cultivate, we digest, we introspect to then create a pause in which we choose. Maybe it's A or B, but more than likely it's multiple options in which we can take one step at a time. Just like our Krama practice in the asana postures, we breathe, we move, and we rest until we know the next right step, in which we begin again. Thanks for being here. Thanks for allowing me to share this story. And I hope that it not only helps create a deeper and broader understanding of tapas, but it encourages you to say yes to the opportunities and the invitations that are right, that are aligned with your best living, and the courage to say no. Take care of you and take care of those around you. We need each other. Be well and namaste.